Thanks again for having me. Steve Woodard, AWS Solutions Architect. Really want to talk about IoT specifically for maybe, commercial industrial use case specifically, but really, IoT is something that almost every single industry we are seeing quite an emergence in. We are starting to see companies in agriculture, manufacturing, healthcare specifically, wearables, sports industry. I mean, you name it, there's an element of IoT in almost every single industry vertical. If you were to come up and tell me an industry, I would probably tell you that there's some sort of IoT in there somewhere, collecting data, sifting through information. So really, I want to go through this deck again. It's going to be 30 minutes. It's still just scratching the surface. I can spend all day talking about IoT, but just really want to be able to plant the seed and how a lot of customers are using it across different industries. Some you may have heard, some you may have never heard of before, but probably some of the companies are going to be very familiar to you. If you're new to IoT, it's just simply Internet of Things. It involves extending the internet capabilities beyond those standard devices such as desktops, laptops, smartphones, tablets, and any type of range of traditional, or non-internet enabled physical device of simply everyday objects. Really, it's embedded technology, and that those devices can essentially can communicate and interact over the internet. And now that we've got the scalability, elasticity, and security of the cloud, we now have a way that we can take all of that. We're talking about millions and millions and millions of bytes of data, and can easily ingest that into our cloud, so that way customers can process that, they can run it through AI ML, they can apply some machine learning to it, they can get some analytics through it. But again, the wide range of application use for IoT is it's endless. So one thing that we would like to talk about at AWS is that we start our customer engagements for IoT with just a simple question. And if that says, if you knew the state of everything and you could reason on top of that data, what problems would you solve? And quite simply, our mission is really to make sure that that you can know the state of everything of all your devices, and that you really can reason on top of that. And that really does lead customers to being able to solve those critical business problems. In the next slide, we'll talk about a little bit of some customers. I'll be able to share some customer story with you, but just being able to just talk with customers to say, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And then we can work backwards from there. Again, is that we talk about a lot of our customers that are already embracing IoT. Many of these customers you're very familiar with as everyday brands or everyday products, everyday companies that you interact with. Just to give you a high level, about 3 of these really quick here is that when we talk about Vizio, they manufacture televisions. Really, AWS Vizio selected us, specifically with our AWS IoT core for their complete line of smart TVs and their soundbars. And that really does include all the new line of TVs that are due to launch for the holidays, specifically around end of the year, things like that. And we're talking about a potential for basically 2 million new devices. And that's even just going to expand as you start getting farther and farther into Q1 of next year. Pintar basically provides beer and water filtration systems to large industrial brewing companies. And what we're doing with there is that we're using IoT Greengrass that can simply, ingest that operational data over the cloud, and then basically, and then over time, we can apply some machine learning, and then that can be fed into a big data analytics engine. And then really what we do with that is we take that and we deploy the output, and then we are able to get an idea of how those local devices are operating, and then we can apply local execution to this as well. iRobot, for those of you who are using the iRobot, which is a really great tool. It uses AWS IoT and some other AWS products to really power that room of vacuum cleaners. Which when we did the math to it is that we've mapped that there were 500 million square feet of floor space, and really that's kind of part of the company's smart home vision that they have. And really, iRobot's innovation really leverage a broad range of products, including things like IoT, compute, mobile services, analytics, storage, database, platform management, networking activities. And really you start to see how really is that, IoT is great because it solves one particular problem. And then we start to apply that across the AWS ecosphere, where we're applying things like analytics. We're able to apply some machine learning algorithms. We're able to start to see some, apply that into some storage, some database. So you start to see the spectrum of being able to harness the power of the cloud to be able to utilize those services to get valuable information. One more, and I'll definitely move on here. One thing I want to talk about here is like with GE, General Electric, they basically have used an Edge OS solution for their industrial IoT. And really what that's done is it's really placed, really emerged into their field assets, including things like 3D printers and aviation, specifically within their foam carts. And then really what that solution does is that uses an embedded IoT Greengrass core with a IoT device management, and then that utilizes the IoT analytics and the core on the cloud side. And then really is that we're able to then basically follow active, 3D printers, aviation foam wash carts, renewables, aviation. We're talking about wearables into 1.5 million wearable devices within the GE, specifically within the healthcare space. So again, is that the wide range of use, application use within IoT is just, it's exploding. So what are customers doing with AWS IoT? Well, we talk about being able to optimize manufacturing. We talk about companies like Fender guitars being able to put IoT within those factories themselves to be able to have a much more what we call smart factory approach to how they process and manufacture guitars. We talk about Philips. Philips, healthcare, is that they're able to remotely monitor patient healthcare. In healthcare specifically, we start to see this more and more as a trend, where we start to see, companies are wanting to have more patient-centric healthcare. And around that is that they want to be able to do more of that with being able to do IoT and monitoring and wearable devices, very, as least intrusive as possible. They're able to collect a lot of statistics, a lot of vitals from patients, and in that way can feed back into a central system. And then that way the doctors can be able to monitor patients, monitor their healthcare over a period of time without them being in the hospital, which is great. We talk about, connecting homes and things like that. We're talking about Vizio, iDevices, and Itron. And then we talk about managing energy resources. The wide range use case of customers are all over the map, and what we're able to do with them is help these customers innovate by giving them the technology that empowers them to be able to solve those complex business problems. Again, I got a customer of mine who works, who basically is in the manufacturing space, and what they're doing with IoT is they're applying IoT devices to a lot of these manufacturing equipment inside their facilities, and it's registering things such as temperatures, vibrations, and then what it's doing is it's sending all of that sensor data back into their AWS cloud, and then they're applying some machine learning on top of that as well. And by that, they're able to do is, depending upon vibrations and harmonics and acoustics and things like that on the actual devices in the factory or actually in the manufacturing floor, is that they're able to predict failure of when that actual machine may break based upon the vibrations and the harmonics and the acoustics of that machine, particularly given a period of time. Let's just say it needs, and it's going to be able to predict maintenance. So let's just say it runs a certain sensor threshold. Now we're able to start to see when does that machine need to be fixed or repaired even before it breaks down. So now we're getting to preventative and predictive maintenance, which is huge when you're talking about some of these manufacturers who are saying, listen, when a machine breaks, we are basically down and we can't produce X product. So if we can get to a point at which we can start to predict when a machine may fail and fix it in real time, that will allow us to basically streamline and improve the amount of output within our factory. So again, is that we're able to help these customers by enabling it and use them with AWS IoT. The saying is that nobody buys IoT technology. They really seek business outcomes. And again, this goes back into AWS and how we approach customers is we're really looking to find out what problems customers are looking to solve, and then we work backwards from there. The technology is the piece that helps customers and enables them to solve an outcome, but really we're looking to see exactly what is their strategy, what is their go-to-market strategy, how are they looking to break into new markets, whether it's wearables or predictive maintenance. Every business has a problem they're looking to solve. Technology just happens to be a component that allows them to be able to take it from A to B to C. So again, our customers, what they're able to do with IoT is that really it's just simply a strategy for our customers. It just empowers them to be able to build that intelligence, to enable them to work with new services, build those business models, or even if in fact that they want to just improve products and services over time. But the biggest thing is that, we enjoy that we can build better relationships with their customers, and they can build better relationships with their customers, understanding their needs. And then really over time is that really we start to develop what we call a data-driven pipeline, where we're starting to talk about massive amounts of data. And all of these advantages simply just lead to revenue growth and greater operational efficiency. So again, if we talk about manufacturing or healthcare, is if we're thinking about how do we break into a new market, or how do we empower a customer to be able to break into a new market, whether that's wearables, or whether that's being able to monitor gas lines within oil and gas, or let's just say, for example, energy companies, where they want to start placing smart readers on basically homes, it allows those companies and those entities to be able to break into new markets. Yep. So a couple of fundamentals when we talk about IoT, we're going to think about just breaking down the architecture. Really, we're talking about the analytics service here, the device connectivity, the device software, right? So how can I make sense of all my IoT data and take appropriate actions? Now we can apply some analytics to that. Second part is the connectivity and control services, right? How do I control and manage and secure those devices at scale? We'll talk about those a little bit more in depth. And then the device software is, the question is how can I build devices that operate at the edge? So for customers, for a perfect example, for customers that are using intermodal transportation, or if in fact if they're a customer like one of mine that's in logistics and transportation, they will put a container onto a ship, and that ship will sail from South America, and it will sail up to a port within North America. The devices that are on there are going to be operating so far away from the land, from basically from land, they need to be able to operate at the edge, or out of the places out at sea where you don't really have any internet connectivity. There's almost no satellites, but I still want to be able to collect a lot of data on how the temperature of the pallets, or the temperature of the containers. Are there any additional vibrations in there? One of my customers has what they call a container that basically runs refrigerated goods from South America, and you need to be able to detect whenever a container, the refrigeration unit fails, because that's a whole container full of fruit that is going to essentially spoil by the time they get to port. So the ability for you to be able to run things that operate at the edge is extremely critical for a lot of customers. So we talk about this virtuous cycle. We love flywheels at AWS. Really is that we center around specifically around intelligence and outcomes, and then we really want to kind of pair those three things around the customer to really enables them. And here we'll get into a little bit more in depth here. So if we take the same concept, we break it apart here a little bit. We talk about the analytic services. We talk about things like site-wise and analytics, being able to make sense of all that data, because really all the data that's coming in from the IoT device in itself is just going to be a lot of raw data. But from a perspective of how do I get to the point where I can make business decisions based upon the data that's coming in, that's where you want to apply the analytics service to be able to make sense of it. When it comes to the device and control services piece of it here, we'll talk about the IoT core. The device management piece, we have, let's just say I have a lot of devices. How do I manage those devices? How do I register those devices? We'll get into device management as well. And then device defender. How do I ensure that those devices are secure? How do I ensure that those devices that are communicating back to me are the devices that belong to me? And we'll talk a little bit more about those details. We talk about free RTOS. We'll talk about the device SDK, Greengrass, and then device tester as well. All those kind of make up our IoT suite. So how can I build devices that work at the edge with AWS by default? Well, I mean, really, we're talking about devices here. These are microcontrollers and microprocessors. Just simply a microcontroller is an MCU is just simply as a single chip containing a single processor. And then microprocessors are basically units that can provide compute and processing power on those edge devices. So for customers that are looking for that type of edge capability, we've been able to move that into a very easy to work type of environment, where we're thinking about using IoT Greengrass for those microprocessors. And what it really does is it really makes it easy to secure those, to securely connect those devices virtually anywhere. And they are basically either they're powered by a microcontroller or microprocessors. So for customers who want to use things like free RTOS or the SDK, they can easily use those to connect to the devices, whether they're using microcontrollers. And for microprocessors, customers can use our Greengrass kit. And that just simply allows you to connect the IoT device and the SDK to that, essentially to the IoT core. Yep. Just the thing here about free RTOS is that mostly the free RTOS devices are not connected, but as the IoT environment grows, those devices will increasingly be needed connected to the cloud, and that's what we mean here. Just a little bit here about RTOS is that, we're continuing to invest in free RTOS since we took over the project right around 2017. We've announced support for 2 new types of architectures, the RISC-V and the ARMv8m in 2018. So this is an area that's going to continue to grow and grow as we move along. Free RTOS was simply, if it was back in 2017, it was ready to be used used in 27% of all embedded projects over the next 12 months, whether that's healthcare, any type of device that was basically using is going to be using free RTOS. Again, with free RTOS is that we do include the free RTOS kernels, and we're very honored that we basically have Richard Berry, who really invented free RTOS 15 years ago. He joined AWS as a principal engineer working specifically on the free RTOS. So we actually have the one who created it is now working for AWS and is continuing to work and innovate in that project as well. And really the benefit here is that when we're thinking about connecting things such as small or low power devices or to give us more processing at the edge. The biggest thing here is that you're able to run things such as Greengrass really to the IoT cloud services or to IoT core. It really just simply allows you to collect data and send them to IoT for analysis and action, and so that way you can have an IoT type of environment that allows you to scale across millions and millions of devices. Most companies are not looking for just a couple of devices. Most customers we're talking, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of devices globally. And the great thing about free RTOS is that it really kind of helps keeps those edge devices secure with things like security credentials, key management integration. So it allows you to keep that data secure with TLS or transport layer encryption. Also, we're going to also now announce too is that we're going to also fully support integrated software for free RTOS with integrated code signing, and that really just simply uses that, so that way it allows you to use the IoT device for those management jobs. We do have a growing partner network that we do work with within free RTOS that includes a lot of traditional silicon-based vendors. Many of them you're already very familiar with. Some of them you never heard of before. But again, is that the partner community is something that we are continuing to grow and grow. And this list is growing every single day. So local connectivity, we were talking about local connectivity. That's just simply the ability to connect those devices on a local network without a cloud connection. And the great thing about this is that it does support connectivity. You can use a proxy device, either running iOS and Android. You can even do Wi-Fi provisioning over local connectivity as well, specifically BLE management. But the great thing about this is that this has support for a wide range of network topologies and use cases. So we do use MQTT for connectivity, and that we use that for a pub sub messaging here. And we do support HTTPS for cloud connectivity and file downloads using MQTT, and that tends to be our default protocol for IoT core. Another great thing about this is that it is HTTPS based, so you can of course integrate this within S3, which is Simple Storage Service or our object-based storage. Allows you to store and ingest a lot of that data in there. So the great thing about S3 is that it's unlimited storage, and it's about 2 cents per gig. So if you're thinking about millions of devices, thinking about storing that data, how much would that cost me? The storage of that is very, very expensive. It was about last year we introduced support for secure elements, and that's a great thing because now what we can do is we can actually improve on the existing security and things like credential management, provisioning of devices. So we do work with PKCS, number 11 interface for key management support. And of course, it does include no open network ports. We only run trusted code. And that's a great thing about it as well. That tends to be a concern. So when we start getting into customer conversations about how do I improve security, we start talking about device provisioning, whether that's bulk provisioning or whether that's single unit provisioning. How is that going to work? And basically, it works by using TLS, and it also works on a certificate-based authority. So that way, you can actually start creating certificates specifically for your devices, and that way whenever your devices check in, as long as it has your X509 certificate, it can then validate, yes, this is my device, and we can check in, it does register as a valid device, and we're good. OTA, that's basically over-the-air updates. That's a critical piece of our IoT value proposition. And essentially, it really is a key part of how you bring the end-to-end security solution to a specific set of devices. And really, when it comes down to it, is that our solution does provide an end-to-end solution from the device to the cloud, so that way fleets of IoT devices really can be updated together. And this is a great thing for customers because they really are concerned about, I got this device, what happens if it runs out of, or if it's out of date, or if it basically falls out of compliance? How do we get that device to update securely? You can now use OTA in configuration with those firmware images and those certificates to basically validate the signature on those devices. Again, we talk about Device Defender. We talk about FreeRTOS and really Device Defender. Really what that is that simply it's a library that allows you to simply make sure that you can keep an easy to report device, specifically device-side metrics to detect, we'll say detect anomalies, but specifically when when these devices are running metrics and if they deviate from expected behavior. Device Defender really looks at that and continuously audits specifically the IoT configuration. And it's the ones that are associated with your FreeRTOS devices. It really is just to make sure that they comply with security best practices. And this is something that came out about a year or so ago. It was a common question we had from customers is, all right, so I have this use case. What happens if these devices start to deviate from standard metrics? What happens if we start to look at and we start to see unexpected behavior? I've got a rogue IoT device. How do I, and if you've got one device, that's one thing, but if you've got tens of thousands of devices, it tends to be kind of almost a nightmare. Device Defender is really a great way for you to provide that out-of-the-box solution within IoT. And that way you can make sure that those devices, make sure that you can enforce those compliance and security best practices. So a couple customers that are working within FreeRTOS, really we're talking about spanning various market segments and use cases that really use this to connect to AWS IoT Core. If we look at Halter specifically here, what they're doing is they're using FreeRTOS to control specifically control and connect smart collars for livestock tracking and health monitoring. If we look at iDevices, they're using FreeRTOSs for light switches, and they're actually integrating this with Alexa. So if you have an Alexa device at home and you say, Alexa, it's actually integrating those light switches with Alexa. PetSafe. This one here basically what it allows them to do is ship devices within FreeRTOS, specifically around a range of pet products for consumers around the world. And then of course we talk about Amazon Key for specifically for businesses using FreeRTOS and believe it or not, building controllers allow them to basically secure entry into those buildings via smartphone apps. And we start to see this more and more where, homeowners and customers are looking for things such as, convenience, ease of use, and, keyless entry is another huge thing here. Amazon Key for Business is using that RTOS for the access to those buildings. And these are just a few customer examples of how we're using FreeRTOS really around the world across a number of different industries and how we're able to harness the IoT devices connected into the AWS cloud. We're talking about being able to connect IoT devices using any operating system. This is the great thing because it allows you that open flexibility. So if in fact, if you're using things such as FreeRTOS Linux, if you're using PostIX or PostIX, if you're using things for RTOS solutions, GHS VxWorks, MCU, it allows you the flexibility to easily integrate those operating systems within AWS. And then really what we've done is we've been able to provide libraries that are going to basically be distributed in the CSDK that are going to be in the same code as it's distributed in FreeRtos, which is great because it allows developers to have that flexibility to cross across multiple languages that allows them to interact with FreeRtos. Great. So how can I extend capabilities at the edge? I think we touched on this a little bit here. I think this might just be a little bit repeat here. I really want to talk about what Greengrass is. Really what this is Greengrass really just extends AWS onto your devices. So that way they can act locally on the data that they generate. So while we're still taking advantage of the cloud, you want to think about, I've got the capability of the cloud on the actual device itself. And with Greengrass, you don't have to send your data to the cloud. The data is stored locally, which allows you to simply save time and cost because you don't have to send that data back over to the cloud again. Now you do have the choice of sending that data over to the cloud, or you can basically use it to process right there at the edge itself. Greengrass just simply has enabled devices that allows you to just, if you need to, route the messages and the data, and it can stay locally, or you can process it at the cloud. It's either way. This is great for customers who are looking for that ability to process the data specifically at the device level or send it to the cloud. Here we're talking about Greengrass. It basically provides 3 core use cases. Again, like I said, remote or local access, remote access. You can actually run some machine learning inference on it as well. And then you can basically use this to extract, aggregate, and load the data if in fact you're doing some fine-grained analytics as well. So a lot of capabilities here within Greengrass. A couple customers who are using Greengrass, running specifically on gateways to power those devices. That manages those edge operations. Again, these are just a couple of customers. Really, we're talking about Hive, uses Greengrass specifically for connected control within hubs within smart homes. CradleWise uses Greengrass to make smart baby cradles. So it's another thing, of course, now me being a new parent as well, this is really cool to have. You start to see how IoT is starting to come very present in almost every single device or everything within the market space, whether you're a company or whether you're a consumer. EcoFit simply leverages Greengrass within gyms. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to track and collect fitness equipment. And basically, again, it goes back into collecting the data on fitness equipment for analytics and predictive maintenance. So when is a machine possibly going to fail so that way a guest doesn't get onto a treadmill and either hurt themselves or it doesn't work altogether? Is it allows you to then predict the maintenance failure and get the analytics from it itself. How long is it run? What's the vibrations and things like that? And Vantage, another great one here, as well as they use Greengrass to basically power their in-vehicle devices specifically for tracking and logistics. So a lot of great examples here. And Volkswagen just recently started using this for enabled smart factories. So when you start to see customers in automation, automotive, industrial uses, we start to see IoT becoming more and more common. Again, we talk about, really the partner network here is that we built a broad partner ecosystem specifically around IoT, and we really do work with partners along the entire value chain from chip manufacturers to device makers to specifically to operating systems, whether they're using Canonical or Ubuntu, communication companies and operators, as well as ISV and consulting companies. So again, depending upon where you may fall in the spectrum, if you're looking for analytics services, or specifically connectivity and control services, device software, is the broad range of the partner ecosystem with AWS is extensively large and it's growing more and more. Okay. So really, again, just to kind of close is really with IoT is that it really can help customers know the state of everything and then be able to apply the reason on top of that. And then the big question I always ask customers when I give this talk is, the question is what problems are you looking to solve specifically around your environment as well? So I hope that was very helpful. Again, you can go to aws.amazon.com/IoT for more information.